Hey guys, welcome back, and today we're going to be making a very basic star. And as you can see, I hope it's showing up for you. It is a basic 9 patch. This is another one that we're going to be manipulating 4 of these into star points, but as you can see, it's still going to be a 9 patch. So we're going to need 4 backgrounds that are solid. That'll be the corners, like that right there. And then we're going to also use these because, as you can see here, you're going to have some background showing in between those star tips. So we still needed those squares, and we're going to be sewing on the star points. Like this. So that will be going right there. And then we will have one more solid that's going to be the center of the star that we will be adding. Now, one thing to bear in mind, you can really change this up. This doesn't have to be the same. You could use a print there and have all your tips matching. You could put a small 4 patch in there just to give it a different look. There's lots of things you could do with the basic star, but we're going to stay pretty basic today. I just wanted to kind of let you know what we're going to be working with. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make these where we're going to sew the tips on. So we'll be doing that 4 times. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the pattern aside. Okay guys, so I wanted to show you this just really quickly. This is my first one, and as you can see, the center of the star, and it's starting to create the points. Just to give you a better visual, we'll put the corners on, and those would lay like this. So what we have to do now is continue on with the star tips. But what I wanted to show you, when you're working with scraps where I had to cut triangles, that meant I also had to figure out where the sew line was on this piece. Oh, sorry. On this piece, to make sure that when it folded back, it was still going to be square. So the first 2, it was just me laying them out. Okay, so I figured there's going to be a 1/4 seam allowance, so I kind of, pressed it with my fingers. Now, when you're using real patterns, you're not going to have to worry about this, but this is working with scraps and unusual sizes, or custom sizes. And so I knew that that was roughly, make sure I'm in the corners and it's squared up. You can take a pencil and draw it there if you want, and then whenever you are ready to sew it, you have a line to go by. So you would sew that, and then it would fold back on itself and still be in square. Then you could do what I did. Let me grab it real quick and show you that I trimmed it off after I sewed it, just to get rid of some bulk under there. Now, if you're not using scraps, there is a very quick way to do it. You would use a square that is smaller than your background, and you would lay it in the corner, like that. And then you simply sew from the corner of this square down to the other corner of the square, and then it's going to fit automatically. You're just going to fold it back, and then you'll trim off the excess from the back. Okay, so again, you're going to use squares that are just a little bit smaller than this one, and sew corner to corner. When you fold it back, it will automatically be in square. You just trim off the bulk. Then you lay down another square right beside it and do the same thing. When you're using smaller squares, it's much quicker and much easier. Now, it doesn't mean we can't do it this way, because now the good thing is Once I've got my first one, all I have to do is take my other blocks. I can mark off based on this one where those sew lines need to be, so they'll go much quicker. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to take time to mark them and then continue to chain piece them. So I'll be right back. Okay, so let me pull these out here so you can see them. Alright, so you can see I sewed my 1/4 inch seam, and then as it would come off the machine, I would fold it back just to make sure it was going to square up the way I needed it to. So now what I can do is trim this off, and then I'm not sure, well actually, that chalk mark is white. It may not be showing up, but I've got my chalk mark where the next one's going to lay. So I can get that sewn as well. And when I put the first one on, I'll fold it back as well just to make sure my line is right. Okay, so let's cut these apart and trim them. And now if you have your iron handy, you could go ahead and iron this. But what I'm going to do is just give it a little bit of a finger press just to get it to lay down. So that I can go ahead and sew the next one on. And then pull it out and fold it back to make sure we're going to be able to square up, and we are. So we'll keep going. When you fold that back, if you're like a 1/16 of an inch off or something like that, it'll square up okay. So I don't want you to get hung up on that, okay? So let's go ahead and get this one ready. Okay, and we are sewing the last one. And we'll pull it out, give it a quick fold back just to make sure everything looks good there. So I'm going to cut these apart and trim off the excess. Okay. So we've got all 4 completed. Just to give you another visual of what these will look like. Let me pull this back as far as I can to get it in camera for you. So it's going to be like that. We're going to have the corners we're going to add, and just like any 9 patch, we're going to sew each row, and then we will attach our rows. Now, if you are new to sewing and it helps you to pin things, by all means, pin, use chalk markers, do whatever you need to do to make it easier for you. Okay, so we have all 3 rows now. That one always gets hidden. So now what we're going to do is we'll take our first 2 rows, fold them together, and bring them to the machine. This one right here is perfect. But look over here by about 1/8 of an inch right there. It's still fine. When you look at that, you don't see that. Whoops. When you look at that, you don't see that this one's about 1/8 off any more than you see that that one is perfect. So I don't want you to stress out over that, okay? And now we're going to just put our last row on. Okay, so we have our first very basic star block completed. And I did want to just point out to you, because this again is completely at your discretion, I chose to have my background be a print and kind of busy and made my star solid. You could have just as easily done that backwards, you know, had solids here with your print making the star. Something else that you could do, I think I kind of touched base on this earlier, but let me grab a piece of material. You could have gone with a totally different color center on your star, or even brought in your background color again. I think I had already said you could put a little 4 patch in there, you know, to mix it up. Now the reason I go with smaller squares on my basic star is so that when I am sewing this, whether I'm putting a border on it, whether I'm just connecting a bunch of stars together, my points are there. I've got all this space up here that's going to protect my points when I sew. I'm still going to have a star. So if you remember back when we did the geese the first time, and we was using the same size square to sew those, it left you no seam allowance at the top. So when we sewed, it cut the points off like that. So that's why I do that. And again, it was a little more difficult today, not that much difficult, but if you're a beginner, you would think it was. Because I was using scraps, I had triangles that I was using versus putting just a smaller square on there. The small squares are the way to go. They're quick, they're easy. You know, sewing corner to corner on that square, simple. But if you just remember, when you make your first one like this, make you a template that you can mark off on the others, your seam lines, and they'll sew together really nicely. Now we are going to do another star in a few days, but I wanted to start with the simple star just so you would see how versatile it is as well. And I had mentioned before in videos about 9 patches, how depending on what you're doing, you'll see a lot of 9 patches in patterns, and depending on how each square is put together, whether you're getting, let me grab the original 9 patch, whether you're getting just a tic-tac-toe board, or in this case, we put some points in 4 of our squares and suddenly we have a star. But it's still a 9 patch. So just wanted to kind of show you that, and I will see you guys in a few days.